You're listening to episode number 24 of the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. This episode is a Q&A episode, and I'm going to answer Rebecca's question. Her question is, do you think it's possible to be truly happy when you're married to someone who is not? Now, by the very nature of Rebecca's question, she's missing the entire concept of living from the inside out. And I'm not picking on Rebecca because many people are still missing the concept. If you have the same question about your relationship or your partner and it's like Rebecca's, then keep listening. If not, keep listening anyway because there's a lot of great stuff in this episode. Hi, I'm Jim Fortin, and you're about to start transforming your life from the inside out with this podcast. I'm widely considered the leader in subconscious transformation, and I've coached super achievers all around the world for over 25 years. Here, you're going to find no rah-rah motivation and no hype, because this podcast is a combination of brain science, transformational psychology, and ancient wisdom all rolled into one to take your life to levels you've never thought possible. If you're wanting a lot more in life, to feel better, to heal, to have peace of mind, to feel powerful and alive, and to bring more abundance and prosperity into your life, then this podcast is for you because you're going to start learning how to master your mind and evolve your consciousness. And when you do that, anything you want then becomes possible for you. I'm glad you're here. Okay, so Rebecca asked an interesting question, and that question is, do you think it's possible to be truly happy when you're married to someone who is not? The thing about this question is I don't have enough information to answer it to the degree that I would want to, so I'm going to answer it to the degree that I can, but there's so many variables missing here. The variables missing here, things that come to mind is an indentured servitude marriage, is an arranged marriage, and I'm kidding about that. Do you have to stay in this marriage? Do you want to stay in this marriage? Is this a marriage worth staying in? And then why are you staying in this marriage if it's not supporting you? Now, again, I only ask these questions. They come to mind to me, and they pop into my mind because, I'm really curious about some things here that we'll go over as we spend our time together today. Here's the thing, though, is Rebecca's question is not an unusual one. Observing people in the world, here in the U.S., I think our divorce rate, I don't know, maybe you know better, but I think it's like 52%. And then people are 53 or something like that, which basically means 50% of people who get married, half of all marriages don't work out. On top of that, I think the number is of the people who get married and get divorced, when they marry again, I think there's something like a 73% divorce rate. Let me go off and segue here for a second, is the biggest challenge in marriages is that people don't know themselves. I think many people are more in love with the idea of being in love and being married than they actually are, in love with the person that they're marrying. I see so much emotional immaturity in the world. I see a lot of blame. I see a lot of victim mentality. And then one of the biggest mistakes that I see in marriage, and I see this all the time, is people think marriage is 50-50. You bring 50 and then I'll bring 50. And then what happens is when one partner thinks they're doing a lot and they say, hey, I'm bringing my 50%. And then look at their partner and they're thinking, hey, my partner's only bringing 37%. They're not showing up. Then the person bringing 50% points and blames. And then it becomes a blame game back and forth and the entire thing melts down. What I want you to understand, and this pertains to Rebecca's question, is that you are 100% responsible for your own happiness in your relationship. Now, I also want to go here because I don't have enough information with her question. Is she even in a compatible, relationship that actually supportive, one that actually works for her? Many people get married and they're miserable for years, but they don't want to get a divorce because of the church or what their family's going to think or whatever. And the truth is, they probably should not have been married in the first place. But like I said, if I had to guess, and I'm going to guess through years of experience, probably 80% of people listening to this podcast, they are in marriages that are kind of like, it's okay. I mean, we're not setting the world on fire. There's not that much romantic, we're not that, what's the word? We're not that romantic. Yeah, romantic. I was thinking, I heard somebody once say romantical, and I know that's not the word. But there's not a lot of romance left in the marriage. And I see so many people staying in very, very static relationships that really don't serve either person in the relationship. So, where I started just a couple of minutes ago with Rebecca is that she's working from the outside in, saying there's something in my life, my partner, it's external, and I'm basing my happiness based upon the external relationship. And you're literally working backwards. What you're doing, Rebecca, and many people listening, and by the way, I picked Rebecca's question because I know a lot of people can relate to it, is Rebecca, you're actually making your happiness based upon who your partner is and how they're being in the ways that they're being. And what you're doing is you're working from the outside in instead of the inside out. You're actually basing your happiness and how you feel with the concept of happiness, how you feel based upon something outside of you. And the surest way for everyone listening, that's why when I started, I said, even if you're not in a relationship, listen. The surest way to be unhappy is to base your happiness on how others are or how they treat you. When you're basing your happiness upon externals, things outside of yourself, you're probably never going to be happy. Why? Because the externals change all the time. Or you're going to go up and down. When things outside of you actually work according to your expectation or your rules or the way that you think, the world should work, then you're happy. And then when the externals change, you're unhappy. So as you can see, working from the outside in is not very stable because we go up and we go down based upon the externals in life. Also, like I said, I don't have enough information here. So what I don't know is what is the reason for and the conditions of the marriage. And when I say reason for, some of you might think, well, they were in love. I don't know that. I don't have enough information. I know some people, and especially women, they get married because they believe it's going to provide security for them. Security is a high value for women more so than men. Even though security is an illusion and it doesn't exist, many women will get into relationships because of the perceived security they're going to get from the relationship. And there are many other factors. Was it a social factor? Was it a cultural factor? Were you pregnant? I mean, was it a financial? Was it? And I've heard people say, you know what? We weren't really, that much in love, but it just seemed like the next logical step. So, I'm looking here, and because what I'm wondering, the bigger picture is if you've got a partner that's not compatible, then what's causing you to stay? And there is something causing you to stay, everything from security or financial security or kids or not wanting to break up the home or even low self-esteem or victim mentality or whatever it is. There's something causing you to stay in a relationship that is ostensibly based upon your question. And again, I don't have enough because, when you say unhappy, how unhappy is your partner? I mean, are they miserable, yelling and screaming at the dog every day? Are they basically just in a malaise in life? Are they lethargic in life? Are they a victim also? Life never changes and, they never get a break. I don't know the degree to unhappiness that you're talking about. And then I want to go to also, and I want to advocate that I am not a family therapist. I am not giving therapy. I'm simply sharing some opinions here. But another question that I have is, what's causing you to stay? I mean, clearly by your question, you said that he's unhappy, and then you're wondering, well, what you're really saying is, can I be truly happy in a relationship where my partner is truly unhappy? So then I ask, well, why not move? Why not actually exit the relationship or move to a relationship where you will be happy? And I want to actually take a step back even farther and look at, I want to ask, is there times and have there been times when the relationship was happy? Is there something that changed in him or whoever her, whatever gender your partner is? Is there something that's changed that makes them unhappy? To give you an example of that, my husband and wife, one of my former students in my transformational coaching program, a very, very affable personality. I mean, very, very wonderful woman. And her husband had back pain. And that also affects people's, obviously, their physiology, but their mental well-being as well. and he was always in a bad mood, and it was affecting obviously the quality of the relationship. So I don't have enough information here but I'm going to keep going because I know I'll say some things that will resonate with many different people in many kinds of ways. So a couple of big questions that I have for you, Rebecca, is this: what's causing you to stay in a relationship that does not build or support you? Now, also, another caveat here is I've had people say, and I've had women say, and by the way, it goes both directions. I do not want to be sexist here, but predominantly it is women that do not want to leave relationships. Even though we're evolving as a culture, I mean, we're still living in, to some degree, a air quote, man's world. Um, it just is what it is. But many times, and especially if kids are involved and women get pregnant and they're out of the workforce for several years, that diminishes their self-esteem or their belief in their capabilities and skills. And then many times, women, if they want out of the relationship, they feel trapped because they haven't been in the workforce and they feel that they cannot compete. So all these questions that I'm asking, I'm just postulating all the way through because again, I don't know your background, Rebecca. But maybe he supports you financially, so you're like, you know what, I have that stability, but even though he's a miserable guy, I'll just stay with him and I'll deal with it because at least, you know what, I'm fed, I got a roof over my head, I've got a car, the kids are taken care of. But a question that I have is, what causes you to stay in a relationship that does not build or support you? You know, I want to share a story with you here. Many years ago, back about 20 years ago, when I worked at the Hypnosis Institute in New York City, I remember this couple, a young couple, husband and wife. They were in their early 30s. They were both anywhere, I don't know, 30, 40 pounds overweight, maybe even 50 pounds overweight. And they came in for weight loss hypnotherapy. And very quickly, she started getting results, and I saw changes in her behavior. What I see a lot of times when women start getting results and they start trimming down is they start feeling pretty again. Because many times they feel like when they're overweight, they're not pretty. And that's just not true for the most part. But I noticed she started changing. I mean, she started like she got her hair done and started wearing makeup and started buying new clothes. And the very first appointment, he came in some old raggedy jeans and a t-shirt, and she came in some old raggedy jeans and a t-shirt. But as she started losing weight, she started changing her external appearance, which was coming from the inside. However, he didn't get the results that she did, and he never changed any of his external appearance because nothing changed on the inside. And I said to myself, I wonder what's going to happen here. Is she going to grow away and out of him? Or is she going to let him pull her back? And what happened is she, even though she was growing, she let him pull her back and back into the old patterns, and she gained the weight back and everything else. I see that so much, and especially in my transformational coaching programs. People that are in my programs are people that are serious about not motivation, but about core level change and evolving and growing themselves and literally just transforming themselves. I mean, that's why they're called, that's why it's called the transformational coaching program. And I see so many people that say, you know what, I'm on the move, man, I'm growing and my life is changing and I'm seeing these results and my business is growing because I'm in your program and I'm feeling better and I'm dropping this weight and I'm letting go of my fears and phobias and all this kind of stuff. And then I hear a lot of times, yes, that's me, but what do I do if I've got a partner at home that has no desire in growth? Now, I can't even propose or even think that I have the answer to that, but I want to give you perhaps a couple of things to think about. I mean, the reason that I say that is that I don't have the answers. I don't think anyone has the answers. Everyone's living their life. Everyone's living their own values. Everyone's living also their karma. And you have to look at what's right for you. One of my mentors, her name is Peggy. She's an NLP trainer, very, very high level NLP trainer. She learned NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, from the co-founders, Richard Bandler and John Grinder, back in the 70s. And she's worked with the biggest names in the NLP industry for many years. Peggy's approaching 80 now, and she's been one of the most significant people in my life for a lot of years, and she was my coach for a lot of years. And a trusted advisor, I would call her. Not only a coach, but a trusted advisor and friend. And many years ago, just inadvertently, I said, Peggy, how do you know? And she was in her 50s when I asked her this question. I said, how do you know when you're with the right person? Now, this day and age, I've been in the same relationship for 18 years, and it's a very healthy relationship. But like any relationship, there's growth pains. I mean, every relationship, I don't care how many you're in or if you're in one long one, if you're growing, there's always going to be growth pains. And we finally have gotten to a place where, you know what? It's like an airplane. We're at 48, 45, 48,000 feet, and skies are clear and it's smooth sailing because we've learned how to communicate and learned how to actually work with each other. But Peggy said something to me that I want to share with you. And what's interesting is even though Peggy mentored me for about 20 years, in the last 10 years, she actually, she moved away doing some different things. And I saw her for lunch a few months ago. She was in town and I called her and said, let's have lunch. And many years ago, when I asked her the question about a relationship, how do you know it's the right one or the right fit for you or whatever? She said, oh, that's easy. She goes, I look at the person that I'm with and I ask myself, is my life better with them or better without them? And I've always thought that's pretty simple, but it's also pretty powerful. Is the person that you're with, do they empower you? Do they make your life better? Do they enrich your life? Or do they drain your life? And that's a really good barometer. And having lunch a few months ago, I said, Peggy, I remember asking you that many years ago. And you were in your 50s, and obviously you've also grown and matured in the last 25 years. Do you still believe that? And she said, absolutely. When I look at all of my relationships, the barometer that I work from is, does this person empower me or disempower me? And from there, I choose, whether or not I want to keep them in my life or I want to limit my exposure to them. So a more complex answer here is, can you be happy in a relationship where your partner is not happy, which is the question? What I want to point out is that happiness is an inside job. I'm only speaking for me. I'm not dispensing advice. I am not coaching. Personally, I would not choose to be in a relationship where my partner did not build me. What I also want to point out is that no one's perfect. The biggest mistake that I see a lot of people making, and especially young people, kids in their 20s, is, and especially women, young women, is many people are looking for the perfect partner. And especially women are looking for the perfect man. What I've recognized over the years, and I'm not all that old, I'm 54, but what I've recognized is there is no perfect partner. And Peggy also shared this with me one time we were talking, and she said to me, which is very powerful, she said, no one person can be everything to you. But what a lot of us do is we look for that one person. Oh, our partner is going to be everything. They're going to be the perfect partner when it comes to the house and our taste in living and the way we're going to raise the kids and what we think about religion and what we think about politics and what we think about sex and the amount of sex we have and the degree of sex we have and what we think socially and where we want to live. Many people look for the perfect partner, and then when they can't find, this perfection in their partner, now they're not happy in the relationship. I see that all the time. So what I want to share there is no one person can complete 100% or no one person can be 100% of what you want someone to be. It just, for the most part, and I said the most part because I've never seen it, not in my own life, and actually in no person's life that I've coached or worked with, have I ever seen one person be 100% of what someone else needs. So just a couple of minutes ago, I said that happiness is an inside job, but a question that I have here for you is, and I'm really serious about this, is what's the point of a relationship, of this relationship, if it doesn't fulfill one of your fundamental needs or in some way? What you don't say here in your question is, to what degree are you unhappy? And there are also some people, like I said, this is a hard question to answer. There are some people, men and women, no matter what you do, you cannot please them. I've seen it. No matter, you bend over backwards, you buy them $100 million house and a Ferrari and a yacht and a boat. You give them, expense accounts, everything. They have everything in life, and they're still not happy and they're still ungrateful. So I don't know these variables in your own dynamics. So basically, I'm doing right now what I call talking out into the air, and hopefully, all of you listening can see yourself in here at some place. Something else that popped in my mind as I was thinking about your question is that you're in a relationship. When people are married, obviously that, or even together, that is a relationship. But what's the relationship of the relationship if you're not getting what you think you need? And it might even be your love language. I don't know. If you're not getting what you think you need out of your relationship. By the way, I recommend the book. It's called The Five Love Languages. Really good book. And I think that book has probably saved a lot of marriages. Where I see a lot of conflict come in the relationship or relationships is where people have two different love languages and their predominant love language is not being met. And when a person's love language is not being met, I tell you, that's a rough relationship. So I'm asking you, do you know your partner's love language and do they know yours? So just food for thought for everyone listening. Somewhere else I'm going to go here. I'm just stabbing in the dark, as I say, talking in the air. But many people, and I see a lot of this, many people stay in bad relationships because they don't want to hurt the other person. And what I want to share with you is you cannot hurt the other person. All that you can do is do what you do, and they're going to hurt themselves based upon what they choose to think. But what many people do is they say like, you know what, I see this a lot with women. My husband's a wonderful man. He's a good provider. He's a good father. He's good to the kids. He's given us a nice life. And, I know that he's not having an affair and everything else, but I just don't feel it anymore. It's just not there anymore. And by the way, that can be rekindled. In many cases, it can be rekindled. What many people do is they condition themselves out of the relationship and out of love, and life just becomes a routine. But what I want to point out, the reason I started that thought, is so then many women go there, and I hear many times, he's a wonderful man, he's a great husband, and it's just not there anymore. So women, what they will do is they'll say, you know what, I don't want to leave because I don't want to hurt him. But you know what? No one made you responsible for his feelings. So many people, because they've got a good heart, many people want to stay in a relationship simply because they don't want to hurt the other. But when they do that, they're assuming the responsibility of the feelings for the person they do not want to hurt. And then what happens is many relationships become just humdrum by the numbers, not a lot of passion. But tell you what, let's just live together for a lot of years and pass time and raise the kids, and by the way, teach the kids by a bad example of how not to be in a good relationship. Let's just pass the time until we kick the bucket. And if you feel that way, and I don't mean kicking the bucket, but if you're passing the time, you're not alone. Like I said, I've done this a lot of years, and hopefully now by listening as much as you have, you know that I've done this a lot of years and worked with a lot of people, more than I can even count. And mediocre relationships are pretty much par for the course in this country. As I said a little bit earlier, is I'm not a licensed family therapist or counselor, so I want to be very clear, as I'm not dispensing any marriage advice. I'm simply just actually, putting out food for thought and things that you may want to think about. But for me in particular, I cannot see how it's fulfilling to stay in a relationship that is unfulfilling if, here's the caveat, if my partner does not want to grow. That being said, have you tried working with your partner and talking to your partner about what your needs are? See, what's missing in Rebecca's question is she's also just saying that, how can she be truly happy in a relationship with a partner who's not happy? What we don't have enough information, about here is Rebecca asking for her needs to be met? And this is both men and women, I see this all the time, and by the way, being transparent, I used to be there. It used to be very hard for me to ask for my needs to be met. I'm not in that place today, but I've been there so I can identify with it. So many times, if it's hard for us to ask for our needs to be met, what we do, and this applies to both men and women, what we do is we just bottle up, and then as stupid as this is, we get mad because our needs are not met. And you know what? We never expressed our needs. Something else I want to point out here, being a hypnotist, for a lot of years and doing hypnotherapy, is there's a misnomer in our world that men and women are different emotionally. That's not true. If you actually ask two people getting a divorce, you ask a man and a woman, and you had them fill out a questionnaire about how they felt. And it was very generic, but basically, how do you feel? What are you thinking? But mainly, what do you feel? And you had them type it so that you couldn't tell the handwriting or suppose that it was either a man or a woman. I'm going to tell you, And a lot of women are like, really? I didn't know that. Men, they are as emotionally vulnerable, and I'm going to use this word, but weak on the inside as women. And the only reason I picked weak is meaning it's just an arbitrary word that I picked. But let me just go back and put it this way. Men get as emotionally hurt in bad relationships or damaged relationships or not getting what they need. They get as emotionally hurt or scarred or traumatized as women. They just show it in different ways. So consider that. Also, like I said, I don't know any, history here with Rebecca, but what I know is if you're not happy in your relationship, unless your partner's a rock, your partner's not happy either. And the reason why is because if you're not happy, you're not showing up. And if you're not showing up, that probably means your partner's needs are not getting met. And if your partner's needs are not getting met, then they're not showing up. And now you have this entire cycle of you don't show up, he doesn't show up, or they don't show up, and you don't show up, and they don't show up. And it's just this cycle of mediocrity in a relationship. So, personally, only speaking personally, I would not be in a dead relationship. I would not be in a relationship where I was not supported. I would not be in a relationship where I am torn down. And I don't expect the world from my partner because I know, again, that, no one person can be everything to us. I want to segue there for a second. If you're not getting your love language that I met, that's more of a significant thing. But the way that I look at it also is there are ways around that as well. And I'm not going to go into it in this episode, but there are always ways to have your needs met. Also, if you're withholding the needs of your partner, and I'm speaking especially to women right now, men and women are wired differently physiologically. I don't think I have to explain that to any woman listening to this podcast. Every woman knows that. However, it's so amazing the lives that we live as human beings that so many people live the same kind of lives, but nobody talks about them. But asexual relationships are very, very common where, people are not they're having sex once every 3 months. And it's not her or him. And sometimes it's the man that is not very sexual and the woman is frustrated, or sometimes it's the woman and the man is frustrated. It can go either way. But you know what? This is what I know. I'm going to talk to you women is if your husband's more sexual than you and those needs aren't getting met, this is what I know is that unmet needs, they will be met. And this is why we live in a country. The last time I read these statistics, 60% of men and 40% of women have had an extramarital affair. Why? Plain and simple, for the most part. I'm going to generalize, but they're not getting whatever needs they might have met at home. Okay, so Rebecca, some questions I have for you here is, are you not getting some of your needs met? Like I said, we just don't have enough information. But however he's being, the first question is that a deal breaker for you? You need to look at that. Also, you need to look at, does this relationship serve my higher growth? And there's a couple of places I can go with that. Does it serve what you might need as a woman? Maybe not. I don't know. Does it serve what you might need as a person? Maybe not, but apparently not. But I also look at higher growth. What I look at is how can you evolve and grow yourself in this relationship as a being without tossing stones at him, without pointing fingers and saying, it's all you, and because of you, I'm not unhappy. So what can you learn and how can you grow from this? How can you evolve? Here's a big question that most people never ask. Relationship, you guys have all heard it before. Relationship, marriage is a two-way highway. What I rarely hear people do is say, what have I done to contribute to this? Many years ago, when I lived in New York City, I don't know where I heard it. Maybe I was listening to TV or radio or something back in 1999, 1998 or so. And I heard this guy say his wife left him and she actually got in a relationship with Jerry Seinfeld. And the guy said, Jerry Seinfeld stole my wife. Well, no, he didn't. Jerry Seinfeld did whatever he did, which I don't know what it was that he did. But you know what? If your wife was happy in the relationship that she was in, she never would have left. So, Mr. Victim here, have you asked yourself what you did to contribute to your wife leaving you and going with Jerry Seinfeld? Another question here for Rebecca and everyone else is, in my transformational coaching programs, the foundation of the program is, who do I have to be? In what way? What characteristics? So, Rebecca, if you ask yourself, in what ways can I be? And how can I be that if I were being someone different, maybe he would shift? Rebecca, what we tend to do here is, you're listening to the podcast. So what we tend to do as people is we tend to generalize and say, oh, Rebecca's the good one. She's the one growing. And yes, Rebecca's on top of it. And her husband must be like some kind of jerk. But the truth is this, Rebecca, or maybe not the truth, but a question to ask is, how are you being? Are you mean? Are you angry? Do you throw things at him? Which, by the way, when it comes to abuse in relationships, that goes both ways as well. I've seen women be abused, and I've seen women abuse men. Even one of my really good friends, he's 6'2", 210 pounds, muscular, former Air Force Academy graduate. And he told me one time, he's like, you know what? I've never told you this. And he's not married to her anymore, but he goes, she beats me. And he goes, I can't tell you the amount of times I've had to actually hold her arms so she couldn't slug me. She has slapped me, she has kicked me, she has beat me. And he's a really gentle guy. He's a really, really good guy. But the reality is when it comes to abuse, that goes both ways. So Rebecca, what I don't know is, how are you showing up in the relationship? Maybe you've shown up in a way that caused him to actually be unhappy. I don't know. Let me rephrase that. You showed up in ways he didn't know how to deal with it, therefore he became the victim and became unhappy, and now he's unhappy, but yet you were part of the cause of that. Is that a possibility? Yeah, absolutely, because again, we don't have enough information here. Another question you might want to ask yourself, a very high level question, is this relationship worth being in? That is a very, very big question as well. Is this relationship worth saving? Another question I have for you and everyone listening is, what am I afraid of? Being transparent, as I said, I've been in the same relationship for 18 years. I am not afraid to be alone. Actually, even though I'm an extrovert and I do a lot of things in public, I really enjoy my alone time. And I could very well be single. I do not have a problem with that. With being single, I'm not afraid to be single. A lot of people are afraid of that. But this is what I know, is that many people are afraid to leave the relationship because of whatever it represents to them. And what I want to share with you guys, and Rebecca, as I said, third time, I'm not a marriage therapist. I'm not advocating you leave or any of that. But what I'm telling everyone is, if you're afraid to leave a relationship, you have no power in that relationship. Why? Because you acquiesce to your partner every single time, because you're afraid if you don't acquiesce, then your partner's going to leave you and you're going to be alone. And then whatever that represents to you, whether it be companionship or financial security or emotional security or sex or whatever it is, you don't rock the boat because you're afraid that you're going to be left. And when you work from that place, you have no power, because your partner, whether it be male or female, will always have their thumb over you. One more question, we're going to wrap up, is this: am I being 100% responsible for myself and my own happiness? Now, we're talking about Rebecca here, but you know what? As you guys are listening, you ladies are listening, I'm sure there's a whole lot of bells that went off and you're like, yep, that's me. I see this, I see that, yep. And probably some of you, and a good portion, are saying, you know what? I could have asked the same question Rebecca asked, and things that Jim is saying to Rebecca, they also apply to me. Rebecca, what you're not being is 100% responsible for your own happiness, because you're predicating and basing your happiness on your husband or your partner. And if this person is unhappy, therefore you're also becoming happy. And then you're doing what we started this podcast with. You're working from the outside in instead of the inside out. Okay, transformational takeaway this week is, we, for the most part, can be happy anywhere when we are 100% responsible for ourselves. Rebecca, does your partner actually build you or take from you? And I want you to get very objective about that answer, because that answer right there is a big answer for you. Okay, well, that wraps up this week's podcast, and it wraps up Rebecca's question, which again was, do you think it's possible to be truly happy when you're married to someone who is not? Okay, next episode it's about the number one thing that you are looking for in life. Most people, and I think you're starting to get it by this point, if you've been listening for a while, most people work backwards, which is why I call this podcast Transform Your Life from the Inside Out. Most people work backwards. They work from the homes and the cars and the title and the social acceptance, and are people going to, appreciate me, and are people going to look up to me, and satiating my ego, and all this social status, which, by the way, social status is a very heavy social currency. It drives people, and a lot of research demonstrates that. But the number one thing that you want in life, most of you go outside of yourself to look for it, but the number one thing that you want is not external, it's internal, and it's inside of you. And that's what we're going to talk about on the next episode. So, keep listening and sharing with your friends. Thanks for listening today, and do what you can to make it a great day today. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this entire podcast. If you're the kind of person who likes to help others, then share this with your friends and family. If you found value, they will too. So please share via your social media channels. Also, if you have questions, I'm here to assist. You can email me questions to support@jimfortin.com, and I may even use your question for a future podcast episode. Also, if you want transformational content like this daily, connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram name is I am Jim Fortin. Finally, I do have a personal request. I believe that we're all here to help others and to grow and evolve ourselves. Together, you and I, let's help more people. If you would please leave a review on iTunes, and a good one, by the way. I'd be grateful, and through your assistance together, we can transform more lives. Thanks for listening.